My name is Wilfred Mworia. I am the Regional Coordinator for Sub-Saharan Africa for the Private Financing Advisory Network. The PFAN Journey is the framework by which PFAN delivers its services to businesses and projects that are in the climate mitigation or climate adaptation space. The process begins with an application from the project to or the business, that is the entrepreneur, to PFAN for PFAN support. The application is made through online through our platform called Climate Invest. When applying, the project provides information about their business or their project that they're implementing or scaling up. And that application goes through a series of evaluations based on our eligibility criteria. For instance, the project needs to be looking to raise between $1 million and $50 million roughly. We do consider projects that are raising smaller amounts of money or larger amounts, but that's a rough indication of what we'd be looking for. The project also has to be working in one of our mandated countries of operation, and it has to be in tackling some climate issue or adopting some technology that is helping address climate change or the impacts of climate change, whether from a mitigation perspective or an adaptation perspective. If the project is successfully accepted into PFAN, we would then assign one of our advisors to provide support services that help the business either get ready to raise capital or go into the capital raising process. That PFAN journey, as we call it, is a three-stage process. The first step involves us having the assigned advisor reach out to the project developer or entrepreneur to find out more about the project. So in the process of evaluation, we just look at what the entrepreneur has provided to us as far as information on their project, and that helps us make a decision. In the first step of the PFAN journey, the assigned advisor goes through a process of talking directly with the project, possibly visiting the project and learning more about the project for them to make a proper evaluation of what the project requires to become investor ready or to go into the investment facilitation stage, which is the third stage. If that stage is successful and the project is found to be worthy proceeding with or providing additional services, the advisor would recommend what sorts of services are required. Typically that involves business planning, financial modeling, or any one of a few other services that we're able to provide that are able to help the project either with their project development process, such as helping advise on securing their PPA or securing some license or permit to implement the project, or performing a market analysis, or coming up with a business strategy, or several other things that may be provided on an advisory basis to the project. Those services are provided at the second stage, which is called the development process or the project development stage. And the project then would, the result of that will be a number of either documents or deliverables that are needed for the fundraising process. The third stage is what we call investment facilitation, and that is for projects that are deemed to be now ready to go into, to be introduced to investors or to engage investors directly with the capital raising process. And usually we will rely on the documents such as the financial model, the business plan that have been developed at the second stage. So at the third stage, the investment facilitation stage, the advisor assigned would identify specific investors that may be interested in this project and will contact those investors on behalf of the project together with the project developer or the entrepreneur. And they would then begin the process of engaging with them either to present, from presenting the investment opportunity, eliciting the interest of the various investors that have been identified, and then going through the fundraising process through to financial closure. PFAN support is limited to a certain extent at this stage, and that limitation is on identifying the investor and beginning the introductory process and beginning the engagement process. The project developer is encouraged to sign an additional success fee for the advisor to be able to provide additional services on top of what PFAN has been able to offer. Everything that we offer from the beginning up to this point is provided at no cost to the project developer. That is on a pro bono basis. PFAN is donor funded to be able to pay advisors, professional advisors, to provide their services at no cost to those projects that are accepted into PFAN. But at this stage, in the investment facilitation phase, we will then expect that the relationship has developed to a certain extent such that the advisor and the project developer can enter either a success fee agreement or other form of direct commercially based agreement at market rates, possibly for the advisor to continue supporting the project through to financial closure. As an example, I can give a project that we worked with in Tanzania that is in the agricultural space. The project went through the application process, they were accepted, and they went through the first stage, which was the validation phase, or what we call the action planning stage, at which stage we evaluated, the advisor evaluated the project, and they provided recommendation on what the project needed to do to be investor ready. That included things that the project needed to do or the entrepreneur needed to do, as far as, for instance, securing land and several other requirements for the project that they intended to implement. Then there were those things that the advisor recommended, which included helping them refine their business plan and putting proper numbers against that business plan. So they helped with building the financial model, making sure that it was well developed and well structured, so that an investor could be able to engage with the financial aspect of the business. So this was done over a period of time, a few months, with engagement with the project developer. And at the end of it, the developer had a set of documents and a properly articulated business proposition from an investment and a commercial perspective. At the next stage, we went on to identify investors. So the way we identify investors, it could be an investor who the entrepreneur has already been aware of and talking with. It could be an investor that the advisor knows or is aware of and is interested in that type of project. Or it could be from any one of the other sources. PFAN itself also, as an organization, has relationships with various investors who we can bring into the conversation, and we also have investors who from time to time will ask us for pipeline, that is for projects that they could look at. So we were in this case able to engage the developer with some investors who had already approached the project, the business, and we were also able to recommend some other investors who we knew of. As happens with fundraising, you look at several investors, but typically only a few may show interest, and even a smaller number may want to engage the business further. But in this case, we were fortunate enough to eventually raise some amount of capital that enabled the business to start. They were going to start up a plantation, for instance, so they were able to secure the land and start up the plantation, and at the moment they are going through that process. So that's one example. We work on different types of transactions. On the mitigation side, we work with clean energy projects that are more in the private, rather the project financing type of financing. And we also work with projects that are looking for more traditional sources of capital. So that's a brief overview of what we do and what we are able to offer projects. So the first stage ends with the identification or outlining an action plan. And the action plan specifies items that the entrepreneur, the project developer, needs to work on in order for them to advance their project to a stage where they'd be considered ready to engage investors and go into the fundraising process. Some of those items, for instance, might be permits or licenses that they need to have in place or to secure that would make the project bankable. It may be, for instance, identifying what market or refining the business proposition, what strategy, what market approach they'll be taking, what route to market they'll be taking. It may include specific things like having a financial model and the documentation, the associated documentation that an investor would look at while assessing an opportunity. So this is summarized by the advisor in this action plan. And from that list of items, there are those items which fall within the scope of what PFAN can support with, and other items will be left to the developer, or at least pointed out to the developer as things that they would need to have in place in order for them to be bankable or for their project to be bankable. Some of those other items, those that fall within PFAN support services, would then be undertaken at the second stage of support, what we call the project development support stage. And we have a number of services that we're able to offer at this stage. Many of them can be found, the details can be found online, but just as an example, typically our advisors will be able to help with creating a business plan, or writing a business plan, or refining an existing business plan to make it suitable for the fundraising process. They'd also be able to support with financial modeling. In fact, this is probably the biggest service that we offer, or the most needed service that we offer, because it's a technical service. It requires some level of technical know-how as far as finance and building financial models. So we can help the business with creating a financial model from the ground up, or with refining a financial model that's already existing. Typically, this will also result in helping the business structure the financing that they require. So do they require an element of grant funding? Do they require equity? Do they require debt? What sort of debt? At what tenure? What is the structure of that debt portion? What's the valuation of the company if it's equity that they're raising? How much will they be raising? Is it, a mezzanine structure that they require to raise in form of, for instance, a convertible note? So all that is typically done under, our financial modeling offering. We are also able to assist the developer come up with, say, a pitch deck, an investment memo, and other associated documents that an investor will be able to look at. So that is really services that are involved with the documentation that is required to face an investor and to engage them in a discussion. Others of our services are more targeted at the business and structuring the business proposition. So for instance, an advisor could be tasked to help the business with developing a marketing strategy, or refining their proposition as far as the business plan, or even helping with the governance structure of the business. And all these are things that are required from a business perspective. Is the business itself well structured? Is the business itself in an investable position? For instance, you'd have a company that may need to restructure its shareholding for it to be able to, or its ownership structure for it to be acceptable to an investor. So we have services that are targeted at helping the business be ready as a business to raise capital. So those are kind of two different types of services that we offer, and the specific types of services that we'd offer at that stage. We give an amount of time for this. Again, just to stress, we can't really do everything, but there are those things that we're able to assist that are directly tied with investor readiness and being ready to raise capital. Some of those services are offered on a purely advisory basis. That is, the advisor comes alongside the business as a trusted advisor, as somebody who knows about raising capital or about structuring businesses and is able to point out or direct the business in what they are meant to do. Or if it is a project, advise them on the project development process and what will be required, what an investor will want to see. So for instance, if the project needs to conclude a feasibility study, then the advisor may not be paid by PFAN to actually do the feasibility study, but they could advise the business on what are the requirements, maybe even identifying a provider for the various types of studies that are required, and make sure that they go through to the end of that process. So some of those services are kind of purely advisory, and then we have those services where the advisor actually builds the financial model or writes the business plan. And usually we'll explain everything that is involved with projects or with entrepreneurs when we onboard them. So, they'd be very clear on what can be expected of a PFAN advisor or not. We do allow advisors to engage businesses beyond this level on a bilateral basis. So if the business or if the entrepreneur requires additional services beyond the scope of what PFAN is able to offer, they can enter into an agreement outside of PFAN bilaterally with the advisor that we've given them for them to provide additional services. So for instance, some of the advisors we work with would offer some of these services through their businesses, and if it's possible for them to go beyond PFAN, that's well and good. I mean, PFAN exists to create the opportunity for these advisors to provide the kind of services, the kind of advisory that a business or an entrepreneur will need for them to be investor ready and for them to raise capital. So that is a sampling of some of the services and what will be required of an advisor at that stage. Typically, we'd stay with a project between, say, 4 months, sometimes even a year, depending on what is required by the project. So for instance, if a project requires a permit, they're building maybe a solar park or something, and they require certain licenses, certain permits, and those are issued by a regulator or a government, then you have to wait until that is done and until they cross that milestone. But basically, that's what we'd do at that stage, and the aim is to make sure that the project is as prepared as possible from a business and commercial perspective, and from a finance perspective, to be able to face an investor, to negotiate with an investor, and to present a viable investment proposition.